Okay, I'm going to assume some people watching this know nothing about accordions and maybe not too much about music in general. So do forgive me if I just state the obvious now and then. This is a 12 bass instrument. It has 6 different notes on this row. And diagonally up from each note is a chord based on that note. Here's the note B flat, and here's the chord B flat major. A chord, by the way, is just a group of 3 notes. Now, so one chord button plays those 3 notes. Now, the bass buttons are not arranged in alphabetical order, but an arrangement that makes musical sense. But this accordion has only 6 bass notes: B flat, an F, a C, G, D and A, and just 6 major chords on those notes, which happily is in exactly the right order for playing Hey Joe. Now, we haven't got any minor chords, but an experienced player can get some minor 7th chords by combining a major chord with a different note. This is B flat major, and if I put a G under it, it sounds like G minor 7th. And you can see me using those types of chords on the tunes I've recorded with this instrument on my YouTube channel. Let's look at a 3-row instrument now. Here are the fundamental bass notes. Here are the major chords. And here is a row of minor chords. Notice that there are 12 buttons in each row, and that's significant because there are 12 different notes and only 12. So if we start on a C here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then there's a C there, and the whole thing repeats. So you've got 1 bass note for every note that there is. So with this 36 bass instrument, you can play music in any key in a fairly simple style. I say simple because it's a bit tricky to play a scale of notes in the bass, because although the chords are handily grouped together, the notes are not. So a scale, for example, C major scale goes. So the notes are dotted around. So that brings us to the 4-row instruments, which have an extra row of bass notes right here in front of the fundamentals. And these are called counterbass notes. Each one is related to the fundamental because it's the 3rd note of the major scale. For example, that's C, and C major goes C, D, E. And there's the E right next to the C. Whereas before, E was up there. Not so handy to play a scale of notes or a running bass, and that often occurs in music. So with a 48 bass arranged in 4 rows, you can play basic chords in any key, major and minor, and you can add some interesting notes in the bass. The 5-row instruments have a row of 7th chords at the back here. Again, each one is related to the fundamental on the same diagonal. So here is C, and here is C 7th. C, C 7th. And that gives a more sophisticated sound to our chords. C seventh is simply a C major chord with an extra note, B flat. But older instruments favoured E, G and B flat as a 3-note seventh. And this is useful because that's also a diminished chord, which occurs quite commonly in many styles of music. This is a Gypsy tune. So to play the diminished chords, I was just playing the 7th chord with one of the counterbass notes to make a diminished chord. Now, an accordion with 6 rows of buttons has a dedicated row of diminished chords here. So this accordion then has 8 different fundamental basses on this row, and the counterbasses on that row. It's got the major chords on this row, minor chords, 7th chords, and diminished chords. However, because there's only 8 different notes and there are 12 possibilities, you can't play in every key. You can play in quite a few keys, but you're restricted by the basses and also to a certain extent by the size of the keyboard here. So the answer is a 72 bass. All the chords and counterbasses, etc. in every key, and a few extra notes on the keyboard, so you can play the majority of tunes. But even with every note and chord represented by the 72 bass here, it sometimes happens if you're playing in an unusual key, well, perhaps not totally unusual, B minor for example, you may well need the chord of C sharp down here, and then you have to come all the way back up here for your B minor. This is a Russian Gypsy tune. So that's why the 96 and 120 bass instruments are regarded as professional instruments, as they give you the ability to play in the less usual keys reasonably easy. And for example, that last tune, which was in B minor, and it ends with a... The larger instruments, like this 120 bass Hohner, tend to have more sets of reeds and give more sounds by means of these switches. And so on. And they can get quite heavy. This one's about 11 kilograms or so.